It's a real honor to be here. Anything tied to Jacksonville, tied to Duval County, is tied to my heart. I was born and raised in Jacksonville. Grew up in Paxson. Ended up graduating from Fletcher. I've gotten lots of sides of the city. My aunt was a guidance counselor for Douglas Anderson and a library at one of the elementary schools I went to. So yeah, man, Duval County, it's home. That is home. I lived in Paxton 5 years. That's what I'm talking about. We out here. Yeah, I've been in Los Angeles for the last 10 years. It's been a beautiful, beautiful journey. And poetry is really dope. I often tell my students, like why poetry? I've been quoting Ethan Hawke for like the last, year or so. And he was talking about, that there's a quote that says, poetry does nothing to change your life, though it does show you why to live it. And I think that that's a really beautiful thought, right? That's what poetry's been for me, right? And most of the time, most people aren't interested in poetry, right? Most people don't go through their daily life, reading poetry or writing poetry, the average person, right? But when we start living, right, and life comes to us, often, whether it's, losing somebody we love, somebody breaks up with us or lose a job, or the inverse, right? We fall in love, right? Someone has a baby and it wraps up our entire world, right? Or something beautiful happens. And often in these times, we search the world for poetry, right? We're like, has anyone ever felt this way before? Has anyone ever channeled this? When I work with my students, I often say, look, you don't need poetry to live. Often, like, you don't need a bunch of tools to build a house, right? Like, you could totally build a house with your bare hands. It might be horrible. It might take forever, but you could do it, right? But if someone gave you a hammer or, a saw or a bag of nails, right? It's going to make that just a little bit easier, right? And to me, that's what poetry is in my life. It's the tools, right? It's the tools to help build the house, which is my life, and make it more secure, right? And last longer. So I'm going to take us on a journey today. I'm going to talk about all kinds of things and hopefully invite you all to put thoughts in the chat or unmute yourself and say things. I am the facilitator for today, but often there's so much we can gain from one another, right? So if you have an insight or a thought, like, please feel free to jump it in. I love having conversations. I love dialogue. And I would love to hear from y'all as much as you're willing to contribute. And if you want to be a fly on the wall, know that your presence is equally as important in this space, right? I think scholastically, academically, we're constantly like, if I'm not present and I'm not doing something, then I'm not doing it right. And I'm like, thinking is a big part of the writing process. I don't know if you've ever thought before you wrote down, but like, you got to think a little bit, right? You got to let thoughts marinate before they come out. We're going to do a little bit of marination before we write. And I want to start with just however you want to put in the chat. I want you to think for a moment, right? And if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, you can, but we're going to do a little bit of envisioning. I want you to envision that your voice, right? Everything that is your voice, the power in it, maybe the strength that comes from it, the anger that might live in it, right? Maybe even the sadness that lives in your voice, right? Everything that is your voice. I want you to imagine it as a seed. I want you to imagine that seed can fit in the palm of your hand, right? Maybe it's a giant pumpkin seed. Maybe it's a rose seed. Maybe it's like, I don't know, right? Maybe it's a seed of inspiration. But I want you to just imagine that you have a seed in your hand. And when you're ready, however you want to, you can put in the chat, if your voice was a seed, where would you plant it, right? You can add as much details to that as you want. You can leave it as blank as you want to. But I want to ask the group, and however you want to add it in there, fly on the wall comment. Embracing the introverts like me. Yes, believe it or not, I am also an introvert, but I'm a Gemini, so I'm like both things. I'm still confusing myself. But yes, if your voice was a seed, where would you plant it? And again, this doesn't have to be detailed. It doesn't have to be a strong thought, right? You can throw it out anywhere. In the heart of God. I know that's right. Yes, indeed. In the dark soil of the mountains. Okay, poets, you better get descriptive. Loving it. To Sean Fly. All right, hell yeah. I love it, right? Powerful thing about poetry. Oh, to see. There we go. To see fly. Yes. In a hole left by the tree that fell in my yard. Jennifer, let's go with the detail. I know that's right. Ooh, what powerful imagery, right? I'll plant my seed in the middle of a Bach Brandenburg concerto. Ooh, with Johann Baez singing between the notes on her guitar. I'm sure I butchered that name. I apologize, but heck yeah, right? Specific, get it in there. I plant my seed now at open mics. Come on, MJ, talk about it. MJ said, I'm in the streets with my voice. Love it. Right? And if it's a thought that you want to keep to yourself, that's okay. But I want you to just take that moment now and envision, where would you plant your seed? I've done this exercise with all types of levels and ages. And some young people that I work with, they're like, I'd plant it in a watermelon patch. All right, cool, right? Or I'd plant it in my pocket so I can take it out and look at it, right? Ooh, okay, right? It doesn't have to be based in reality. It can be based in whatever, right? It's you're the author here. In the words and books so that it can be shared and savored. I know that's right, Chris. Talk about that. So it could be shared and savored. Yeah. I might plant mine in a little barbecue smoker. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't got good barbecue out here in LA. I said it. I'm deprived. I'll take Jenkins barbecue. That's how down I am, you know? I don't know about Jenkins. Maybe you do. I don't know. All right. Final thoughts, right? Any other final thoughts put in there? You can also unmute yourself, right? If you want to just say it, you don't have to type it into the chat. You can just let it sit as is. But I think this is a beautiful place to start. I want to engage in some different thoughts and some different things, right? But keep thinking about where you want to plant your voice throughout this session today. Today, I wanted to kind of like leave it open, right? And as a poetry instructor, when I'm like, we're going to leave it open on how we write today, I'm always like, it's free verse. That's what we'll be working on. Free verse can go in a lot of different areas and go in a lot of different sections. And I think as a young poet starting out, when I didn't understand what I was writing or how I was writing it, it became free verse, right? And I think that's a beautiful place to go. So I want to just let you know, right, that one thing I love saying a lot of things, but one of the things I love telling my students is, don't worry about being brilliant or deep or anything. Just be honest. Honesty is my favorite form of poetry. I don't think we get honesty in the world we live in all the time. If I'm being honest, I don't think we get honesty from ourselves. I'm speaking for myself, right? Maybe you're super honest with yourself. And if that's the case, kudos to you. But I think oftentimes we don't always get that honesty. We don't always find the genesis of why we're afraid of something or why we're angry at something or why we even love something, right? And so I want you to just be honest today. And the next thing is a big ask, but I'm going to put it out there. I would be honored if you would give yourself permission to write a bad poem today. All right. Oh my gosh, it's counterintuitive. But I want you to give yourself permission to write a bad poem. You don't have to be the greatest. This doesn't have to be the greatest thought. This doesn't have to be the best thing you've ever written today. You just have to approach it honestly and give yourself permission to just write, right? Oftentimes we're like, I can't do it. I can't give myself permission. But I have my favorite poem in the world I want to share with y'all today by I think my favorite poet, probably next to my wife because I'm a good husband. No, but she is my favorite poet. But one of my favorite poets, one of my biggest inspirations in the whole wide universe was this poet. I don't think a lot of people have heard of her work, but I think it's Maya Angelou is how you pronounce her last name. I'm not sure if you've heard of her. She's really super cool. Really a kind of an underground poet. Not a lot of people have heard of her work, but really fancy. I've recently discovered. No, Maya Angelou. Man, what an incredible individual. I mean, to me, like the grandmother of poetry, the soul of where poetry comes from, for me, right? She has beautiful work, Maya Angelou was a poet who was like literally touring, going on roads months before she passed away. Like she was in the field doing like everything. But this is one of my favorite poems. I love talking about this poem, and I love talking about Maya Angelou because I love talking about griots. Griots were the storytellers or the travelers, right? Or the people who kept the story of history and lineage often, right? And griots were super respected. They show up to like this is, you know, ancient times where there's kings and queens and all. They show up to the king's castle and be like, yo, pay us to write you a poem, right? And the king would do it because like the king usually feared poets, right? Because the king knew that if the king didn't pay them to write a poem, they were still going to write a poem, but it was going to be a diss poem. They were going to come at the king. And then usually, I mean, that's where people got all their information. If the poets were sharing this stuff about the king, it could cause a revolution. Maya Angelou, to me, was one of those poets who was revered and respected by kings, by presidents, by people all over the world. This is one of my favorite poems, and I think it's like a hidden gem of her work. It's called Masks, right? And she's actually doing a cover of a Paul Laurence Dunbar poem, which is, again, a brilliant piece. And she kind of marries it with another one of her poems. She talks a little bit about it, but I think the intimacy of how she presents the poem and how she reads it is literally one of my favorite things ever. Zoom can be a little tricky. There might be a slight delay, but please take a listen. I'll even put the link in the chat for y'all for later if you want to take a listen. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now and share with you today a little poem by what I think is my favorite poet, Maya Angelou. And again, if there's anything that pops up for you, any lines that feel powerful for you, throw them in the chat, throw your thoughts in the chat. This is a dialogue that I'd love to have with y'all. I think poetry is where I am most honest. I know that's right, Chris, talk about it. Me too. So again, this is Masks by Maya Angelou. And boop. And oh my gosh, 1 for 1. 2 for 2, 3 for 3 on the unmute. All right. And sit back, take a listen, and we will have a brief discussion afterwards and see where we can go. But again, Mask by Maya Angelou.
I have written a poem for a woman who rides a bus in New York City. She's a maid. She has 2 shopping bags. When the bus stops abruptly, she laughs. If the bus stops slowly, she laughs. If the bus picks up someone, she laughs. If the bus misses someone, she... So I watched her for about 9 months. I thought, Now, if you don't know black features, you may think she's laughing. But she wasn't laughing. She was simply extending her lips and making a sound. I said, oh, I see. That's that survival apparatus. Now, let me write about that to honor this woman who helps us to survive. By her very survival, Miss Rosie, through your destruction I stand up. So I used the poem with Mr. Paul Laurence Dunbar's poem, Masks, and my own poem for old black men. Mr. Dunbar wrote Masks in 1892. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It shades our cheeks and hides our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts, we smile and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but oh my God. Our tears to thee from tortured souls arise. And we sing, hey, baby, bye. We sing, hey, but oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. But let the world think otherwise. We wear the mask. When I think about myself, I almost laugh myself to death. My life has been one great big joke. A dance that's walked, a song was spoke. I laugh so hard, I almost choke when I think about myself. 70 years in these folks' world. The child I works for calls me girl. I say, yes, ma'am. for working's sake. I'm too proud to bend and too poor to break. So I laugh until my stomach ache when I think about myself. My folks can make me split my side. I laughed so hard, I nearly died. The tales they tell sound just like lying. They grow the fruit but eat the rind. I laugh until I start to cry when I think about myself and my folks and the little children. My fathers sit on benches. Their flesh count every plank. The slats leave dents of darkness deep in their withered flank, and they nod like broken candles, all waxed and burnt profound. They say, but sugar, it was our submission that made your world go round. There in those pleated faces I see the auction block, the chains and slavery's coffles, the whip and lash and stock. My father's speaking voices that shred my fact and sound. They say, but sugar, it was our submission and that made your world go round. They laughed to shield their crying. They shuffled through their dreams. They stepped and fetched a country and wrote the blues in screams. I understand their meaning. It could and did derive from living on the ledge of death. They kept my race alive by wearing the mask.
As I'm in the midst
of messing up my flow commercial. On three, if you want to take a collective deep breath with me, that's cool. But 1, 2, 3. Man, oh man. Sometimes I have to prepare myself for that specific poem. My goodness. That's my favorite reading that Maya Angelou has that I found. I mean, her work is prophetic and brilliant, but my goodness, when I think of honesty, right? I mean, that is how you show up. My goodness. I mean, I obviously am a fan of this poem, can talk about it for years and will talk about it a good bit in a minute, but I want to leave space for y'all. Thanks for throwing this in the chat, all capital letters. Wow, that's powerful. Oh, needed that today. You need a day. Yeah, I did. Needed that today, need a day, need all those things. But any thoughts, feelings, feedback before we dig a little deeper into this poem? And any thought or any feedback is good, right? Even if you're like, it was cool, right? Even if you're like, it was a little glitchy. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your feedbacks. Anyone feel like unmuting and bringing their voice into the space? Introverted poets being challenged to talk. Introverted poets, will they do it or not? I don't really know, so I'm gonna rap because I'm uncomfortable and I just like to do all that. All right, it's our submission.
Maybe people aren't as introverted as much as sometimes when you know you're being recorded, you have a tendency to take a step back a bit.
Ashe, I respect that.
And I'll throw me into the mix because that was part of my hesitancy, right? I feel like this is not a new idea, what particularly people of color, right? I think that we see it in so many different ways that it's like, yeah, right? I think one of the harder pieces to the puzzle is figuring out when and where to put it down, or pushing it a little farther and asking yourself, is it actually possible to not even pick it back up again? Because because we understand that, in some ways you could say like, well, it's a protective, right? We do it for protective reasons. But in other ways, that mask is heavy and it's exhausting to constantly do this. And so if for nothing else, exploring what would it look like to be able to go, you know what, we're not going to pick that back up, or limiting, right? Trying to etch out ways that we can like not grab it as much. Those were some of the things that came to mind.
Come on, MJ. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you bringing your voice into the space. Absolutely. Maya talks, Miss Angelou, I should say, Madam Angelou, says, it's a survival mechanism, right? And I've seen so much of that just in my own life where I'm like, I'm going to laugh instead of crying, right? And I think like it's a really, really beautiful. I have so many thoughts, but I'm going to let y'all jump into. Thank you, MJ, for bringing your voice in space. Jim, I see your hand. Jim, I'd love to invite you to speak on whatever you feel.
Fantastic poem. Just a couple thoughts. One, Du Bois talks about the idea of double consciousness, which is so interesting, and I think this piece does a great job with kind of fleshing that out. The second thing was just a question. I like how the performative part, so it's not just like only the words on a page. I was wondering if you could say a little more about giving ourselves the different wobbles and wiggles, and to think about how to work that in our work. I kind of do it, but just your thoughts.
Oh, thank you for that, Jim. And thank you for bringing in Du Bois. I mean, my goodness, talking about double consciousness. I also want to say like the idea of wearing a mask, that's something like all of us are doing in one way or another, right? Even if you're using that mask to cover a callous part of yourself, right? Or a part of yourself that's like completely jumping out. I think one way or another, all of us are wearing masks, right? Some of us are doing out of survival mechanism, right? Some of us are doing it just to hide ourselves, right? But I think the most important part is to understand what mask you're wearing, how long you've been wearing it, because sometimes it's like adding layers of paint to yourself, right? And you might remove one thing and think, oh, okay, my mask is off, but there might be so many layers blocking you from your honest self that I think it's a really important dialogue to just start having. But Maya's performance aspect of this poem, oh my goodness gracious. I've seen this poem so many times, but like she starts to do this poem, and before she even speaks, she purches her lips. She's like, you can see the word trying to fight itself out before she even says, anything. And I just think it's so important. I don't know what this performance was. I don't know who was in the audience. I could tell that there was something that was like unnecessary that needed to come out of Maya in this performance that just completely translated it. But when you're embodying your work, I think, especially a poem like that, she was covering Paul Laurence Dunbar, so she knew where the poet was when he wrote the poem originally. And I mean, my goodness, you can't say a line like 70 years in these folks' world. The child I work for calls me girl, and I laugh for working's sake. I'm too proud to bend and too poor to break, so I laugh until my stomach aches. You can't necessarily say that without having some compassion or passion tied behind it. And so when I say show up honestly and you're writing, I think it's also showing up honestly in your performance, right? Giving yourself that moment to really feel and grieve. I mean, those weren't performative tears. She was really crying. And I mean, that is the thing that I think just completely enraptures me about this poem. The gasp for air that comes from the laugh that turns into tears to crying. It's so relatable and so brilliant. I digress, but could go on in detail. Peter Schaefer, playwright, also deals with masks where we wear in a profound way in his play. I don't want to say the name wrong. Angelou's reading cracked my head open with the power and passion. Absolutely. Also why you are wearing the mask is important. Are you wearing it because you choose to, or because you're or is it being worn because everyone around you wears a mask? Absolutely. When I work with my young people, especially young people who are dealing with settings or environments of incarceration, you have to wear that mask. So many young people are wearing it out of a survival tool. I mean, we keep talking about survival, but legitimately in some of the environments that I've been in and grew up, right? Or even like see my young people around, you can't just be happy-go-lucky walking around. You might end up feeling or being characterized as a target, right? Someone might come at you in different ways. So it's a very interesting thing. Like I'm always like pumping my gas with the mean face. I don't know why, right? But I still feel like at times I have to wear that mask. Chris, I see your hand. I'd love to invite you into this space to speak on anything you'd like.
Thank you, Matthew. I was gonna say it's really interesting about the line that really spoke to me was about laughing till you die. And I think that brings up such about like the whole poem itself, like the exhaustion of always carrying that mask, and you literally do hold it till you die, and just the things that you put aside to kind of make do in the world, to get by, to make it a little bit easier. This poem is just phenomenal, and yeah, I think I need a day to just kind of absorb it all because it was just such a like oomph at the end there. Like, but thank you for sharing that. I hadn't heard that poem before.
It's like a secret little gem of Maya's work that I think, because a good chunk of it is a cover, I think a lot of people don't go to it right away to when they're referencing her work. But to me, oh my gosh, this just is like peak for me in so many different ways. But thank you, Chris, for sharing that in. Any other thoughts before we jump into some writing? You know what I'm saying? Some writing like activities.
Yeah, I'll hop in there just to say, like, thank you for sharing this material. Like, listening to that was amazing. That I'm looking forward to reading more of her stuff and to watching more of her performances. I'm sure that they echo a lot of the energy she just showed.
Yeah, no problem, Jessica. Thank you so much for bringing it. I think I saw you getting attacked by a bee earlier, so I'm glad you're safe.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
I saw the bob and weave. I was like,
Yeah,
no,
I
but
got it outside.
thank you for that, Jess. Yeah, I mean, I love sharing this poem for that exact reason. I think it's part of Maya's catalog that people don't always get to see a lot of. And I think, like, again, she's just one of my favorite poets. And I think Maya's work could be more complex. It could be, more detailed or more whatever that people consider when they really love or look at the upper echelons of poetry. But to me, it's the honesty that I keep coming back to. And when we write today, I would love for you to approach this in your most honest state. Remember, give yourself permission to write a bad poem. Don't worry about anything but being honest when you create. But I'm going to give you something that I like to use out here with the group Street Poets that I work with. We use something called starter lines. Starter lines, words that open doors, whatever it might be. I use them as poetic refrains. Aha, the poetic refrain, the cheat code of the poet. Aha, right? I love repetition. I love repeating things. The poetic refrain is like the hook of a song almost, right? Or a line or phrase or thought that is repeated throughout the poem, right? And how it comes in. So I'm going to give you a few starter lines that you can use. And again, what I love about these is, like, when I lose track of what I'm writing about, I go right back to my starter line. I don't know what to say. I go right back to it. So I'm going to give you a few that you can use from. And the first one is the mask I wear. Mask I wear. Right? Your next one is when I remove the mask. Is my typing like extra loud? I'm always so self-conscious about typing on Zoom. I'm like, dun, 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 dun. When I remove the mask. Thanks, y'all. And if I'm being honest. Okay, super loud. Now I can't tell if I'm being bullied or not, but I'll take it. Sorry, Kate. So I'm going to give you 3 to work with. The mask I wear, when I remove the mask, and if I'm being honest. And These are just lines to kind of get you going. If there's a topic or a thought or something that's already sparked in you from listening to this poem or this dialogue that we've had, please feel free to write on that. Go wherever your mind takes you. And again, just be honest, have fun. I'm going to give us time. It's not the concept of time. It's not linear. It's all good. We're still yesterday and today and tomorrow at the same time. It's 9:36. Sorry, 12:36 for y'all. So I'm going to give y'all, let's take about 10 minutes and just see what comes out in 10 minutes. Try to devote it to writing. And if it's okay with y'all, I'm going to throw a little music on in the background just to have us vibe out and chill. I love having a little background lo-fi in the background. But I will come and check in on y'all in just a few, but let's take about 10 minutes and see what comes out. If there's any questions or concerns or comments, please feel free to reach out directly to me in the chat. All right, y'all, have a good time, and I'll check in about 10 minutes.
noticed the lights were on, and I thought you might be home. I wasn't sure.
All right, beautiful folks. Try to find those last couple lines. 10 minutes. It's never enough time. Never enough time to write a poem. Thank you for the poems in the chat. I got a special private poem. Haha. Maybe we'll share. We'll see. Try to find your last line. Remember, a poem, like people, it's never really finished. Right? There's always more story to be told, always more to talk about. But try to find those last couple lines if you can. And when you're ready, come on back. Come on and join us. So as you're finishing these last few lines, I want to ask the group my favorite question to ask, which my partner asks all the time, Alicia Wise. She says, how did that feel? Right? You could just talk about how that felt to approach this topic, to approach this writing. And I know we didn't get a lot of time to write. So I hope that you spend some time on your own thinking about the mask you wear, how you can remove it, or when you should remove it or reinforce it. You tell me. But open to anybody. Feel free to unmute or throw it in the chat. How did this process feel? How did that writing feel? Did it take you anywhere? Did you feel it in a specific part of your body, right? How did that feel for you? Also, if there's anyone who's brave enough, I've been quoting Brene Brown for like 3 years now. Brene Brown says that the only way they can measure courage or bravery is through vulnerability. It's the only measurable way to measure courage is through vulnerability. So I want to see who's the bravest among you. Very strong feelings, choked up in the throat. Felt so good to write it out loud. Yeah, Jess, hell yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Yeah. And again, if y'all want to share, you can, but I see a wonderful hand raised. I see multiple hands raised. What? So I'm going to stop talking and give the stage to Lisa to share what you have. Lisa, feel free to take it.
I really connected with something you said earlier about the layers of paint. That sometimes that's what the mask feels more like instead of just something individual. And that's I kind of took that and ran with it, and was able to. I'm still writing, so I think this is going to be one of those long things that has to be worked on for a while. But yeah, that's what I really connected with, was those layers, because sometimes it's not a matter of something you put on and then take off. And that's, like I said, that's what I really connected with. So being able to look, I was looking back and seeing maybe where some of those layers, came from, why there are layers and things like that. So yeah, that's what I really connected with. And I think that this particular exercise and coming at it from the powerful aspect of the Maya Angelou poem really brought up much more. I don't think emotion's the word. I think it's just this powerful feeling in the gut that allowed a lot of this to flow. Anyway, I think that this is an amazing exercise, and I think that probably more than a singular poem will come out of this. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Thank you for your words. And listen, I would love to hear your poem. I'd love to read it. I'd love to high five you virtually. I really appreciate you bringing your voice into the space, Lisa. Thank you so much. And Bonnie, I see you over there with your hand up. Bonnie, would you like to share a part of your poem or just how this process was for you?
I'm going to share what I wrote. It's not finished, as we only have 10 minutes, but it is what it is.
Let's go. Work in progress. I love it.
Flooded, rocks thrown, parents groan, windows shatter, shards scatter, doors flung open, casting polypropylene. Shutters bang shut, punch gut, gotta grab the mask, can't be seen again. Hide these feels, no life appeals, rivers dry, politicians lie, rain, plop, plop, all these thoughts just drop. Dams burst, society hurts, feeling cursed, gotta grab the mask, can't be seen again.
Let's go, Bonnie. Come on. Wow. Bonnie, can I ask, how was that process of writing?
It wasn't bad. Once I got into the flow of it, it just started coming, and I have websites marked for quick synonyms and stuff. So it's like go in there and just hit and quick read. And I've been writing for years, so it's like, okay, get as much as you can do in time. And I love writing in workshops and just getting as much done as I can in time limits.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Bonnie. That was really dope poem. And I know the time constraint can feel really rough sometimes, but I also love like seeing like, whoa, like all of this came out of like 10 minutes. Like that's time well spent, you know? So just thank you so much for bringing your voice into the space.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Ooh, man, I know y'all hiding some super dope poems in here. Somebody's hiding super secret awesome poems, but no pressure, none of that. I do want to leave room, right? This always happens. Every workshop, every little open mic thing, but specifically at workshops, there's always somebody who's like right on the edge of wanting to share. They're like, "Ooh, I want to share, but I'm so shy. I'm from Chicago. I'm from Chi-Town, and that's okay. You're from Chi-Town. I understand. I am also from Chi-Town. I am a shy person, believe it or not. I just hide behind my beard. That's my mask. But I want to know, like right now, somebody's on the edge of their seat thinking, oh, I want to share, but we're running out of time and I don't want to take up space. I want to hear your poem. I would love to hear your work. Yes, you, the one who's thinking, oh, he's not talking about me. I'm talking about you. I'm not making eye contact. I'm looking at everybody, but I am talking about you. If you felt that, it's you. So last call. Would anyone like to share their poem or their thoughts or their feelings of this process today?
I'm here, but you can't see me for some weird reason.
I see you, Ruth.
This is Ruth Van Alstein. Oh, you can see me?
Yeah, I got you.
Oh, okay. I can't see myself.
We see you. You're lovely.
All right, okay. So I'll share mine. If I'm being honest, I would look to the stars for freedom from the darkness that lies within me, hitch a ride on Mercury's chariot, and take a spin around Mars, and glide along Neptune's rings, gathering stardust and Pan's happy thoughts while learning to fly.
Oh, Ruth. We almost didn't hear that.
Yeah.
I always feel that. I always like, oh my God, we almost ended the session without hearing that. You're like
Yeah.
a celestial Mary Oliver with that poem. Like I really love that. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we see you and we see the smile. So thank you for that, Ruth. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. We're right at like 5 minutes, and I want to leave some room for Hope at Hand to say some words to y'all. But I think we got room for maybe one more if there's one, last. Aha! I thought you were thinking about it.
I am.
Is it Princess?
Yeah.
Rashid? Yeah. Would you share with us? I'd love to hear your work.
Thank you. I did follow directions, but not totally. But this is what was in me at the moment. So, okay, hold on. In the future, I will wear a mask, one that hides my face, covers it up, my body too, a body mask for when I get on stage. So you can't judge my age, just my ideas and energy. I need you to see them first. That's why I would wear a mask, colorful or clear. The mask is not for you, it's not for me, so you won't get distracted by my age. Focus on my ideas, fruit of my mind. That's the best of me. The mask will be like makeup, only better, like a Mexican wrestler, like Rey Mysterio. I will wear a mask, so you can't judge me.
I can't believe you almost didn't let us hear that. I can't believe it. Listen, poetry is about knowing the rules and then breaking them. You write in whatever direction you want to go. That was perfect. You ain't break no rules.
Oh.
Fire, Rashid. That's so dope. So good. Yeah, I was like trying to remember one line and then another line would come up. But you said something about Yeah, you said so much. That was so great. I really enjoyed that. Beautiful job.
Thank you.
Time well spent. And we got to hear your voice. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it. And I am going to put the link right in the chat for everybody right now, so that we all have the link. But thank y'all so much for spending the morning, the afternoon with me. I really appreciate the opportunity. I always go out of my way to be available and do things in Jacksonville with Duval. I love my city. I really, really do. So I really appreciate getting to share time with y'all and your incredible poetry and your incredible thoughts. So thank you so much for your time.